Welcome to the Hangin Banners podcast with your host, Tyler Witt.
How about this block here by Tyler Witt? You're going to see him get out in front, and he's going to get a key block that springs this play.
Jack Coachman.
And here he is, having the time of his life.
And Ryan Sartori.
Maybe short, but he's thick.
That's thick with two C's.
We're back. Episode 9 of Hangin Banners is here, and if you can't tell, I'm in a new locale. Those watching will know that I'm in a new locale. No bed in the background anymore, no dresser. You can't see my gaming setup anymore. It is purely a professional background that I've, decorated a bit. Actually did this last night, so procrastinating at its finest. But gentlemen, I'm glad to have you back. This is episode 9. Like I said, I'm Ryan Sartori. Jack Coachman is here, Tyler Witt is here, and we're ready to roll.
I think so. I feel like it. Fortunately, there's not really a way for it to come up because you always intro the show. I'm pretty sure for the last 4 episodes, when I do my little notes for myself, I have the wrong episode number. I don't think I've been right since like episode 2. So I'm glad when you say what it is at the beginning. I'm like, okay, changing the notes here.
No, and as I say that, I look at the agenda, and it's actually episode 8. So we're firing on all cylinders right now. It is episode 8.
Changing
not
it again.
9.
Okay, well, I had 7, so that was also wrong.
You were wrong twice. So
We'll get there though. That's why when you go to the podcast on Apple or Spotify or whatever, you see the list, you could just count. That's what I need to start doing for now. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's where we are.
that's what I need to start doing too, apparently, because that was an embarrassing start to the show. But we're up, we're running, we're back, we're breaking whatever little bit of rust that we have off, and it's good to see the boys again. Catch me up. What's going on in your guys' lives? What did I miss? It's been 2 weeks.
Feel free, Jack.
Oh, feel free for me. I'm trying to think. I'm honestly so jumbled about the timeline of events now. I think we had spoken since I had gone to Texas, but then after I went to Texas, I went to Florida. So I've been jet setting around the southern half of the country, visited family, so that was nice. Thought I was going to go there and escape the Midwest cold fall transition to winter, but it was actually like 70 degrees the weekend that I left. So didn't miss anything too bad here, but it's nice to see family and stuff, especially out of state family as you approach the holidays and things, and it's tougher to see people. So that was a good refresher, but otherwise chilling. It's a good time of year for sports. I'll tell you that.
Certainly is. Jack, you're pumped up. College basketball started yesterday.
Oh man, I never really pay attention to when it starts because I'm so into NFL, NBA's getting rolling, that when I saw on Friday, I'm like, oh wait, opening day's on Monday for college basketball. Then when it hit, I'm like, oh, we're so back. But before that, I honestly didn't even remember that it was coming. So I'm starting to see a pattern.
Yeah, I got to work opening day for NIU men's and women's basketball. We'll talk about that in a second after I hear what's going on with Tyler Witt. What's up with the Blue Bombers? How's Canada? You still got the dog?
No, our foster dog went home.
Who did that dog?
Well, it was returned
to the moon.
It was returned to its original foster, which we were just watching him for a week. But he went out with a blaze of glory, just pissing everywhere. So,
so maybe not a blaze, but like a sizzle. If he was already hot,
Yeah.
he pissed, maybe a sizzle of glory.
Yeah. We're very leery on the fostering right now as we wrap up our stay in Winnipeg, but that is where we are at. It is playoffs in the CFL. We just had the semifinal round. The boys got together and we watched both semifinal games in preparation for the West final game. That is this Sunday. And along with that, I have to wrap up my stay in Canada. So I have to, start the process of, okay, well, I have to end my lease. I have to return my furniture, and I have to figure out how I'm getting all my stuff home.
Return your furniture?
Yes, there's actually a very convenient company here that lets you rent furniture.
Yeah, but like couches and stuff, beds.
Yeah.
Fill me in on this.
So they bring it in, they assemble it in your apartment or house, and then they come back and they disassemble it and they take it away for you.
Well, that's actually awesome.
Yeah,
It
super
is.
convenient.
But so in my life, I've been told I'm bougie. and renting furniture that others have used is something that to me seems a bit dirty.
See, I can't tell you if it has been used or has not been used, but it
Okay.
just says that it is assembled in a store in Canada. I'm sure it's taken away and then the upholstery is cleaned. But for the most part, it's
hope.
just, you would hope, yeah.
Well, I
But
mean, think about like, have you ever
I-
slept on a friend's couch or something? Like, your friend's sleeping on a friend's couch. You sleep on their couch enough times, it's your couch.
Yeah, but I know my friends.
I've
I
certainly
don't
slept
know
on
who.
people's couches who I don't know as well,
That's
right?
I suppose not entirely wrong.
Mhm.
In my head, the thing that I just think that there's so many bodily fluids in couches and stuff like that I just wouldn't want to lay on
No,
them. But
I'm on board.
Tyler, I'm
I
not
think it's
knocking
sick.
it,
No, no, I think it's sick. I think that's
the
awesome
two
play.
the
but I'm
two
not
things
trying it either. So
the two things with upholstery that we have are we have a couch and we have a small chair. The rest of it's typically like just wood. I have like this chair that I'm sitting in right now. We have another one in the living room. So it's been a good experience with this, but I think it's more beneficial than trying to buy all the furniture, move it into yourself. It's just more of a convenience thing. But as I was saying, just wrapping up here in Canada, hoping to be back by Thanksgiving. So I am looking forward to that.
most definitely. And I'll have to take the quick trip south to go get some cheese fries or something now. So once you're back in the States, I'll catch everybody up briefly. I don't want to drone on any longer. I'd love to get on with the episode, but new background. You can obviously tell things have changed. I've moved. I'm now a resident of Rockford, Illinois, where I've started a new job as an on-air producer at a country station up here. I'm wearing many, many hats right now. As I noted, I also am working NIU games for men's and women's basketball and football, and I do some board op stuff for that. So there's a lot of stuff going on right now, which is why we missed an episode of the podcast, but we're back. That's what matters, and that's what's going on.
All right, so I have to say it because while you were talking, I had a thought in my head of a funny thing to say, and it made me laugh, and that's not a great thing always. But when you said you wear many hats and you work at a country station, I'm picturing that that's the origin of the 10-gallon hat, right? Is like that's why they made such a big hat so people wouldn't have to wear so many. I'm so ready to like, oh, it's radio, so nobody knows what you look like, but no, you've got the boots, you're wearing all leather. Like, please tell me you're just like full country now.
Oh, I am Doug Dimmadome, owner of the
Yeah, you
Dimmadome
get like that
Dimmadome.
huge hat that goes on the screen.
I'm walking through the door like this just to get in every morning.
Some like empty pistol holders on the side. Get like the Yosemite Sam stash.
I've got spurs for some reason.
Exactly.
Everybody knows who's coming down the hall because I just.
No, that's awesome though. That's very exciting news. For sure.
Yeah, and it's been a fun start. I just got home a little bit ago from day 2 of the job, and they've already got me hard at work, and I couldn't be happier about it because I'm coming from a place where I was gainfully unemployed, and I'm happy to have a purpose, a reason to wake up in the morning now. So, with that, let's jump into the show, the full rundown, what we got going on today. We will start as always with Count Your Wins. And for those who maybe are just joining us for the first time, this is a segment where we go over something good that either happened to us or something good from sports, maybe even from pop culture. We throw that in. We call it Count Your Wins. And Tyler Witt, you're starting.
Well, so this is more of a personal count your win.
Okay.
So every year, well, let me preface this. My biggest fear in my entire life, my phobia, is gremlins from the movie Gremlins. Yes, I am horrified of the green gremlins, the music, everything about it. I have a very big phobia of them. I don't like them. The music makes my skin crawl. It makes my heart start to palpitate. But I got into this tradition when I was in college with my roommate Seth, and he would make me watch it every year. And he would say, you have to face your fears at least once a year. So to keep up with tradition, me and Nicole actually sat down and watched it. And this year was the first year that I like made it through the whole movie and was like pretty okay after. So I was very proud of myself.
That
Good,
is
man.
that is big to conquer the fear, but also I'm like, as a man of many phobias, when you're like my absolute biggest fear, and then you said gremlins, like I'm sure it's like torturous for you and terrifying, but I'm like, that's a pretty peaceful life. That I feel like there are a lot of much more common fears. I was like, there are some fears that people encounter on the daily, and it's like not to minimize your fear. Again, I'm not trying to diminish it, but I'm like, I was so ready for like something that would be like, oh, I'm afraid of heights, and like I went skydiving, and I'm like, oh, dude, that would just mess me up. But no, gremlins, like I'm with you, dude. They're creepy, man.
Yeah, I watched it at a young age. My mom, this is gonna date me. We went to Blockbuster.
No, we were
And-
all around for
I
Blockbuster.
don't act. This is gonna date me. You're in your young 20s.
Yeah,
For our
all
younger
the same age.
audience, okay?
Blockbuster was around for the majority of the population's youth.
All right. Anyway, little young me running around Blockbuster with my mom, and she's like, "Oh, Tyler, you would like this movie. It's really funny." So me being the whimsical child that I am, I sit down and watch it, and I didn't sleep for the next 3 days because I was
Oh,
so terrified.
no. I'm just
Yes.
picturing this kid just like sapped of all their youthful energy, like, I'm so excited for this movie. My mom said I'm gonna love it, and then just like their entire life changed. Villain origin story. Like this is Tyler's the reason that there are no more Blockbusters. He started a campaign then and there.
So
Oh, good stuff. So, okay, what is your irrational fear, Jack?
Which one?
If you had to put one at the top of the list, what would be your
The
irrational
one that's
fear?
most glaring. I don't know that it's the thing I'm most afraid of, but the thing that comes up most in my life is I'm terrified of dogs. And that comes up
Really?
all the time. Well, obviously it comes up all the time because everybody on the planet has to have a dog, otherwise their life is unfulfilled. So no, dogs, nope. Like we had a cousin came over to the house over the weekend, and him and his girlfriend were like, "Oh, we're gonna adopt this dog in the area. Can we bring it back?" And I'm like, they were just gonna be in the garage, and even with that in mind, I'm like, I'm just gonna be in my room and like probably lock the door or something. Like I was in Florida, my sister brought her dog over to my parents' house, like, yeah, everybody meet it, and I'm like, all right, I'll catch you guys later. Like, no, I can't do dogs. I both am mildly allergic, scared of them, and generally have a sense of disdain towards them. I don't like them either.
What about bunnies? Do you like bunnies?
I don't have an issue with bunnies.
Okay, because we've never mentioned on this podcast, the big bad Tyler Witt has a therapy animal, and it is a rabbit. He used to have 2. Rest in peace, Oreo. But Leroy. Rest in peace, Leroy. And may I knock on wood for Oreo? No, who's Leroy? There's a Leroy.
Now I have to get into his whole backstory.
Backstory?
My rabbit's name is Oreo, but he has an alter ego. His name is Leroy Jones, and he's an attorney. You might know from his work on the OJ case.
Oh,
he's part of the dream team. Yeah.
So
Does he
Eeyore
just
was the one that
bust into the room and yell, Leroy Jones?
Yeah, similar.
No, I'm on board with rabbits. My sister was thinking about fostering a rabbit when we were living together at our childhood home, and I told her I was fine with that. My rule on if we're getting an animal is I just didn't want it to be like 100% free roaming animal, something that has an
you wanted to
enclosure.
put it in a cage, essentially.
Yeah.
That's fair.
But like I love going to the zoo, and there are a lot of animals that I'm fine with. The birds I like, bugs I don't mind too much. Dogs are no, they could go. I would be fine if they were
You're a
all just
backwards
calm.
person, Jack Coachman, and I love it.
Canophobia.
My irrational fear is nursing homes.
Oh,
Really?
Yeah, can't stand going into nursing homes.
that's
I
not
think it's-
crazy.
I think it's something to do with the fact that like death ultimately scares the hell out of me. But also as a kid, my dad's grandmother, my great grandmother, was 95 and lived in a nursing home in rural Illinois. And every time you would go in there, you would just hear like just painful moans coming from down the hallways. And I was just like, what place is this?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, so nursing homes have always been a no-go for me. They're like, oh yeah, we're gonna go visit Graham. You want to go? And it was just like hanging on to the ledges of the doors, like a CrossFit athlete or something. I don't know. Jack, what's your win of the week?
my win was already alluded to, and it was opening day. The one true opening day in the world of sports.
come
NBA,
on.
MLB, NFL, everyone take
They
a
don't
seat.
even have it painted on the court. At least
College
baseball has it painted
basketball
on the
opening
field.
day is a big thing because that might be the most, well, yeah, I think that would have to be the sport with the most games going on for opening day anywhere in the world, which obviously is a little bit loaded because there's like 300 teams. But, oh, dude, I'm so pumped. I love watching anything that I can get like streaming, any of the like mid-major matchups early in the season that are good because a lot of the like 20-point favorites, 18-point favorites, what am I going to watch? I made a lot of stupid bets, all of which lost. They were all super long shots. You put like 10 cents here, 10 cents here just to get in the spirit. There were some really cool almost upsets. Loyola Chicago almost got upset by Fairleigh Dickinson. They had a buzzer beater to send it to overtime.
Yeah, what?
That's got to be on
TCU
the bingo card of college basketball opening day.
Oh, dude.
Is when you see the upset and you see who it was going,
No. Fairleigh Dickinson's D1. They've made the tournament a few times as a play in 16 in the last few years. Yeah, don't disrespect that. Come on.
I'm not trying to.
TCU almost got upset. They're number 14 in the country, 35-point favorites against University of Arkansas Pine Bluff.
Zippity zoo zoo.
So yeah, that tough start for the Frogs. They did survive it though. And then there were a couple actual upsets too. Florida Gulf Coast. Maybe you guys remember Dunk City from way back in the day. They
Of course.
oh yeah, the Horned Frog thing. They beat USC at USC. That would be the California USC, and Cal lost to UC Davis. So I'm like, all right, college basketball. People think madness only happens in March, but it's November and it's already mad. So that's my win. College hoops is back.
Love it. Yeah. And like I said, I got to sit in for NIU men's and women's last night. NIU women's got blown out by number 9 Notre Dame in South Bend. And then the men played University of Illinois at Springfield and got beat by like 12.
Wait, NIU men lost?
Yeah.
I didn't even see that. To UIS?
The Prairie Stars or something like that. I think that's
They're
what
not
UIS
even.
is.
They are D2. I'm pretty sure, right?
I think that's probably right. I think
they are.
they must play with like University of Indianapolis.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Oh
they're in the
yeah,
same
that like
conference.
Ferris State, some of the other things there.
Yep. Yeah. Ferris
Oh
State sounds like it'd be there.
no! Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, like I said, craziness. I can't even imagine. I don't think there was a line on that because it was probably so unlikely that there was even any loss. But it happened.
My producer brain is working right now, and I'm going to ask you real quick before I move on to my win. Do you have a lock for who might be the eventual champion this year, so that I can mark this and use it in March?
I forgot if I already picked someone to win. The team that jumps to my mind is Gonzaga, which is such a that's a sinking ship to get on every year. You're just you don't feel like they're ever actually going to get it done. But the team is so good. Drew Timme has been running college basketball for years.
Oh yeah.
Julian Strother still on the team. He was starting to rise up towards the end of last year. And obviously they have a weak schedule. They walk into a high seed every year anyways. And then Kentucky, depending on if we get like the monster season that people are hoping for out of Oscar Tshiebwe, that's another school I'm watching. But Gonzaga would be my pick right now.
Wow. Even with Chet Holmgren went to Gonzaga too, right?
Chet Holmgren wasn't even always he was definitely the most talented player on Gonzaga, but like the way that they used Timme on offense, Holmgren wasn't even always the most impactful player on the floor.
I'm surprised to hear Timmy's even still at Gonzaga. I feel like I've heard that name for years.
Dude, the COVID years, there are some people playing and they're like, I'm looking at guys' rosters like, I was just looking at somebody on Pine Bluff that like this is their 6th season and their 4th school and they're still a junior or something. Like the eligibility rules got weird with COVID stuff and redshirting. So you might see some 25-year-olds running around with like teenagers.
The quarterback at one of the Texas schools is like 29 and has 3 kids or something like that.
You remember Brandon Weeden?
North Texas.
North Texas.
North
That's right.
Texas, yeah.
University of North Texas.
Yeah, Brandon Weeden was an old guy. He got drafted at the age of like 27, 28 or something, I think.
And he played for the White Sox, didn't he? Or he was in the farm system for the Sox, I think.
I don't know that he ever played. I think he was.
I believe he was.
It's entirely possible.
So many of those guys get drafted too.
Yeah, and then they never go. But I'm gonna wrap up Count Your Wins with one that I think is probably annoying to a lot of people. And I'm happy that it's over, which is why it's my win of the week. Today's election day in Illinois, and I'm elated for this day to come and go, and we don't have to worry about it for a little bit of time, because this has without a doubt been the most intrusive election cycle ever. You've had your YouTube ads, you've got your signs on the road and your commercials and things like that, and they get annoying enough as it is. This year they changed the game. This year they started sending texts, and it's
that noise, that sound effect from Tyler.
Yes.
It's intrusive. It's the only word that I can think of, and it's nonsensical. It's just, I can't believe that we've gotten to this point where it's like you're getting random videos about some judge who's going to crack down on abortion or not crack down on abortion, or this person's dangerous or that person's not. I just stop. All of them, you just in caps. So I think some of them you can say like, oh, you take us off your mailing list, text stop to this number, and all of them in capital letters and with multiple exclamation points. Stop. That's too far to me.
The one that I dislike the most, I don't really mind. You get junk texts from other things anyways, and sometimes they're not junk. Maybe it's like, oh, my dentist texted me, I have an appointment. Like, oh, good, I would have totally forgotten otherwise. But I got some texts about, like, make sure you go vote. Like in these last couple days, I've gotten a few more, but I voted like a week ago. So that I'm like, if you have access to all of my information, like if I'm already a registered voter and you have my phone number, like, can't you look and see that I already voted? Like, that should get me off the list. I've done what you want me to do. There's nothing more I can offer. If I vote again, I'm going to cause problems.
Very much so, right? Now, and just on top of that, I think there was a lot of organizations pushing to like, hey, go vote. I don't think that those organizations actually care. It's just like a nice thing to do from a PR standpoint. Like the NFL and their push this year to be like, hey, go vote. And, NFL stadiums are going to be polling places this year. Like, I don't think the NFL genuinely cares. It's just like a thing to, I guess, quell some of the people out there.
Well, actually, now that we've brought it to sports, I think that the NFL as a league maybe doesn't care a ton, but I do think that teams care. And so I think that is a big thing. Like when they turn stadiums into polling places, like a lot of that happens in more urban areas where access may be limited for either like transportation and working hour reasons or gerrymandering and things like that, where it's too confusing and hard for people to vote. So I do think I appreciate that sports teams have put a more concerted effort in like pushing voting eligibility and voter registration and stuff. But you're probably right. Like from the very high up, top down, it doesn't really change much for the NFL. I'm trying to remember who did it a couple years ago that it was a big thing. Was it Atlanta? Because Georgia's had some tight races. I don't remember, but like that's a very big thing because they can accommodate so many more people than like your local elementary school or like I go to the civic center. Yeah. No, I definitely am on board with sports starting to push it more, but I don't know that Goodell is like actually, trying to trumpet that he's some great patriot and he feels like this was the vision of the founding fathers. Like, nah, he probably is just putting a stamp of approval on things.
Sure. Yeah. And, I was going to say too, the NFL trade deadline was awesome. We don't have to go too in depth in that. We got NFL talk coming up later, but the NFL trade deadline, I think 20 players were traded at or near the trade deadline this year, which is undoubtedly the most active we've seen this league in a trade deadline scenario, a league that I think 8 years ago, you didn't even hear of in-season trades or trades really at all. You just kind of had to wait for a guy to become a free agent. Teams didn't really entertain trade ideas. So I think that it was a lot of fun this year to have players moving around and then seeing them almost immediately be on their new teams when it can be very difficult to install a significant player to your team mid-season. So with that, let's jump forward to intercepted at the goal line. I've got to admit, I had a really hard time filling this out with something that I think the listeners would be interested in hearing. I really have had a pretty all right go at life recently because I think things are just trending in the right direction. I will say moving into this new place that I'm in has been slightly a disaster. again, why we missed an episode. It's been slightly a disaster, though things are starting to turn around and look up a little bit. I won't bore everybody with the details of it, but essentially this place that we're living in now was not outfitted with proper electricity. And so for the first 4 days we were here, we did not have working lights. We were essentially in a brownout situation. The furnace didn't work. We couldn't use our microwave or our toaster. Like, just simple appliances would not work. And so that's probably the worst thing that happened to me this past week. But that is now starting to figure itself out, or has figured itself out, and we're good. So I'll let you guys take this over. I let Tyler lead on the last one. Jack, you lead on this one.
Okay, well, there's a easy, clever tie-in that your issues were related to power, and my intercepted at the goal line is the power ball. I can't believe, after however many years that they've been running the lottery, that last night the Powerball wasn't able to be drawn on time due to technical difficulties. They did the drawing this morning. I think it's up to, was it over $1 billion? I think it was 1 point something billion dollars. And somebody did win today. I think the winner was somewhere in California. So
LA County.
yeah, it wasn't me. I'm in Illinois, but I did have tickets. But to me, it's so shocking that we've turned things into such like efficiency angles and like digitizing and mechanizing everything, that if something goes wrong, like, okay, let's push it back so we can do it right. I'm like, hold on. I feel like I remember as a kid watching on TV when they do the lottery, it's just this little like gumball machine of balls. It shoots one out, you pick it up. I'm like, what was the malfunction? What could have gone wrong with that? It's just you pick a ball and it has a number. There's a number. Pick a ball, has number. There's number 2. So I didn't read too much about like what actually went wrong. I don't know. I saw different messages about, was it hacked or was it just a failure of some sort of digital thing? And whatever it was, it's over now. And I actually am more excited, I think, when anybody wins the Powerball, because I don't really love hearing about it. It's not my favorite means of gambling. I'm like, all right, like, great, somebody won. Now we're gonna wait for it to climb up to 100 something million or 500 million again, and then we'll talk about it. Hopefully next time they don't pull late.
What's the lump sum on 1 point whatever $billion? Do you think is it north of 600 million?
Yeah, right.
Jack's doing math. I'll fill in the void with I don't know.
Yeah, move to Tyler. I'll get an answer for this.
No, I think I just wanted to comment. I think that if it malfunctioned, they should have brought out like this old rustic hand crank lotto machine, like you see it like bingo night. Just
Hell yeah!
Put on a show must go on. But to continue with the intercepted at the goal line and to relate to Ryan's, I have a heating issue in my apartment, which is pretty devastating.
What's going on?
Being in Canada with snow on the ground, it is not the best. So there's this very convenient switch in my bedroom, and it has a summer setting and a winter setting. So when it started getting colder, I flipped it to the winter setting, and it turns on the baseboard heaters and all throughout my apartment. Well, at least we thought. The baseboard heaters do not work in my living room. So where I typically spend most of my time when I'm, like home, it's freezing cold, and Nicole is freezing cold, and we all have sweatshirts and hoodies on and blankets on, and it's miserable. But all the bedrooms are toasty warm. So we have come to the conclusion that we now have to flip it to the summer setting during the day so that we can somewhat heat our living room while all the other rooms get cold, and then at night flip it to winter and allow them to heat up. So very elaborate heating process for my apartment. Yeah. For no reason.
Did you try switching it to Wumbo?
I Wumbo, you Wumbo.
He, she, we, Wumbo. It's the study of Wumbology, SpongeBob. Jack, do we have an official number?
Yeah, I saw one report that said it would be 929 million.
God.
So that, because I think this one got up to 1.9 billion, so I think it's like just under a half, which when you think about like, I don't know. Obviously, I think the lump sum is a fine way to go about it. Like, just get the money and then you can do with it what you can, still invest it in things and stuff. But when you think about like, oh, I won $2 billion and then you're like leaving $1 billion on the table, like, oh, that's kind of crazy to think about too. That's definitely the gotcha scheme in it. But no, congratulations to the person in California who I'm hoping has remained anonymous, unless California lottery laws state otherwise. Some laws you have to report who you are. But
There's a Nick Cannon movie about that, but I digress. I think it's a Nick Cannon movie. Okay, we're going to get to NFL Week 9 in just a minute, but first I want to put to bed my favorite season. Jack's just started. Mine just ended. The World Series came to a conclusion on this past Saturday. The Houston Astros hoisted the Commissioner's Trophy, that hunk of metal that mattered so little in 2017, now means the world to them in 2020. The Houston Astros dominated the Phillies, and I think the Phillies probably came back to earth a little bit. They were hitting, and then in the World Series, they set a World Series record for strikeouts in the World Series. But Jeremy Pena is here, and he's a star. He is the only player ever to obtain a Gold Glove at shortstop, a League Championship Series MVP, and a World Series MVP. He's the only player to ever do that. Not in a single season, in a career. He's the only player to ever do that. I think that that's pretty cool. Also, in his first playoff run ever, bats .345 with an OPS of over 1,000, 20 hits, 9 of them for extra bases, and in the World Series alone, added a 16.5% chance for the Astros to win the World Series. That is a significant number in terms of win percentage added, especially championship win percentage added. What a season. And now we are on the doorstep of a winter that could see some gigantic numbers thrown at baseball players. We could see Shohei Ohtani traded, though apparently it's come out that he might not go anywhere. But Aaron Judge is bound to make over $300 million. Trey Turner is bound to make over $300 million. Carlos Correa could sign a long-term deal that could get him a number that big. We are going to see a lot of movement and have a lot of fun. This is, I think, the single best free agency period in all of sports, just with all the different signings and how significant even small moves can be for championship teams. So with that, good night, baseball. We will see you in February for spring training. For now, we leave it to the NFL.
Yeah. Hey, you know what, though? Baseball, strong momentum, right? Because like you said, big free agency upcoming, excellent playoffs, super compelling World Series, big trade deadline this last season. So all of a sudden, baseball is they're on the rise, right? They're working their way back up into higher public favor. But I mean, if you're a baseball fan, I don't think you can complain too much about the direction that baseball is going, especially looking back at where it's come from over the last decade or so.
Over the last calendar year,
Right.
This time last year, most big-time baseball fans were worried if we were even going to play baseball in the year 2022 of our Lord. And they did. And it was one of the best seasons I've seen in a bit, right? I am largely moved by the fact and excited by the fact that this year we saw the emergence of some stars who are 22, 23 years old, like some certified stars already. When you look at Rodriguez in Seattle, when you look at Jeremy Pena, who had an under the radar year, but still was amazing. Michael Harris in Atlanta. I'm going to forget guys. Adley Rutschman. I think that Bobby Witt Jr. had a great year in Kansas City. He's only going to get better. I'm going to miss names here, but there are so many young guys that emerged this year that we've heard about for years in the minor leagues that are here now, and they're about to take over baseball. There's a lot of changing of the guard coming. You see Pujols leave. Cabrera's on his heels. Verlander might soon leave. Kershaw. There's a changing of the guard coming, and I think MLB is working on pivoting towards being a more front-facing, public-facing company where they want everybody to be a part of it. And I'm excited to see where the future is. But we wait for another season until 2023. You know that I'll be talking about some big free agent signings and stuff as we move through the offseason. But for now, good night, baseball. See ya.
Hey, baseball.
And with that, how about we move into NFL, the thing that people actually want to hear about?
I don't know, man. I feel like there are some good cases going on in baseball. I feel like of all people, you're undercutting baseball right now. Like
No, well,
we're talking about the old guard Astros. We talked about them a couple weeks ago. Like this is a whole new roster. 25-year-old kid is the MVP on a roster that still has Bregman, still has Altuve. Like I don't know about the people want to hear this. Like this is the time people want to hear baseball. So
for those just listening, I had a ton of fun when I said, let's talk about baseball, and both Jack and Tyler looked down to their phones. I was like, okay.
no. I was checking
No,
Jeremy Pena's age.
and I'm only busting your guys' balls a little bit, but
That's right. If you're out on baseball, fine. If I have to be the last defender of America's sacred sport, then it's in big trouble.
you're the last of the Mohicans here, Jack. Okay, we're moving on to NFL Week 9. We start with 1-point coverage. Essentially, I'm going to go through every single game. We are going to have 1 point, or I'm going to have 1 point about each game. And afterwards, we'll talk about what we think are the biggest headlines from NFL Week 9. And so we start with 1-point coverage. Philly at Houston. I think the NFL needs to investigate Jalen Hurts for hate crimes against Devonta Smith. The LA Chargers at the Atlanta Falcons. It was this week's game of the week. Also, Arthur Smith is funny looking. Carolina at Cincinnati. Joe Mixon had the second best fantasy performance of all time on Sunday. Indianapolis at New England. Indy fires their offensive coordinator, and the new guy calls 29 passes for Sam Ehlinger. Bills at Jets. The Giants are 6-2, and now the Jets beat Buffalo. Grease the polls in New York. Las Vegas at Jacksonville. If I told you that Derek Carr had 259 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Devontae had 146 yards and 2 touchdowns, and that the Raiders scored the first 17 points, would you think they win? Because they didn't. Green Bay at Detroit. I'm going to do my best TikTok impression. Aaron Rodgers, what happened? How you lose to Detroit Lions? Minnesota at Washington. How can you possibly like eking out a 3-point win over Washington? Seattle at Arizona. Kenneth fourth quarter Walker III is a certified league winner. Jack, roll your eyes all you want.
That's such a complicated thing to say. That's so I'm picturing it like written Kenneth fourth quarter Walker III. I don't know how you're still thinking straight.
Kenneth, how about 4Q? Either way, don't interrupt 1-point coverage. The Rams at Tampa Bay. Tom Brady is in a full midlife crisis, divorced, and now thinks winning 16-13 is really fucking fun. What's next? A flashy car? Tennessee at Kansas City. Are we sure Ryan Tannehill isn't mentoring Malik Willis? He was 5 of 16 for 80 yards, 0 touchdowns, but no interceptions. Miami at Chicago. Justin frickin' Fields. He's here, and for the first time in my life, the Bears have a quarterback. Book it. We end with Baltimore at New Orleans. Lamar Jackson aside, Justin Tucker may have been the most entertaining player in this game. He said in a post-game video with Marlon Humphrey, he's smoking on that Saints pack.
Wait, can we go back? Did I miss the Bengals-Panthers one?
Yeah, Joe Mixon had the second best fantasy performance of all time. That's 1-point coverage. And now, gentlemen, I open the floor to you to give me your best topics, most important topics from NFL Week 9.
Well, the first thing I actually want to protest I saw this. Where did I see it? Some fantasy football guy on Twitter was the one who posted like Mixon's second best fantasy performance, which I don't think is true. I'm pretty sure that's I think that's a highly disputed stat. I think he's like in PPR, it was like 12th best in standard. It was like maybe it was second best in the last like 3 years or something. So I'm not blaming you for it because this was a highly circulated stat, but I don't think it's correct. But good for Joe Mixon anyways. We need to pump him up a little bit. He has a very low yards per carry in many of his games.
Yeah, that offense in general has just kind of been, but on and off. Anyway, Tyler, go.
The one that really was just in my face was the Vikings Commanders comment. To celebrate this, like you beat the Commanders by 3, and you had Kirk Cousins on the plane, shirt off, with the bling on. I mean, winning is hard in professional football. Don't get me wrong. It's every win should be celebrated, but especially after seasons like the Vikings have had, where it's up and down, and you don't really know what kind of team you are. I feel like it's very difficult to be that excited about a win over the Commanders.
Well,
they were.
No, I mean, okay, they were down by 10 points with 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and they end up winning. Like, that's an exciting win. And the Commanders, believe it or not, were 500 coming into this game. So it's like you're on the road against a fairly quality opponent, whether we super buy into the Commanders or not. Like, I feel like that was worthy of a celebration. I'm trying to see if I could pull up a strength of schedule ranking, because some of these teams that I'm a little suspect of. Like, I know the Commanders have had a weak strength of schedule, but it's still a decent win. Yeah, there's some other sketchy people down at the bottom of this list, but I think so. The Kirk Cousins shirtless thing, I might have had issues with that for different reasons. That just that was strange imagery to see. But no, I think celebrate a big comeback win. Why not? You're 7-1. Eagles beat the Commanders.
I don't know that they went. I don't know that Jalen Hurts went shirtless on the plane ride home, but I kind of wanted to. I wanted to talk about the Bears. I think that it's not only because I cheer for this team. I watch them religiously every Sunday. I think that it's a national headline that Justin Fields is figuring it out over the last 3 weeks. He is just absolutely tearing defenses apart. I think that he's put himself in a situation where he is akin to Lamar Jackson. Now, I understand wholeheartedly that he must have more longevity to be commonly put on that same pedestal as Lamar Jackson, but you've got guys from this Miami Dolphins defense going to the media and saying tremendous things about Justin Fields and his ability to disrupt defenses. He set a single game record for quarterback rushing yards in a game. In a world where Mike Vick and Lamar Jackson exist, he ran for 178 yards, ripped off a 61-yard touchdown with some ball carrying moves that you see from running backs and from wide receivers, but this is coming from your quarterback. This guy is, I think, legit, and I think that he's been able and allowed to put his 2 cents into the offense here recently, and I think that it's paid gigantic dividends for the Bears.
I have a conflicting comment about this. I don't think that this is necessarily the offense Justin Fields wants to run. I think it's the one that he has to run.
Sure.
I feel like their offensive line is not nearly good enough to allow Justin to just sit in the pocket and throw the way we know he can throw. And I mean, 178 yards from a quarterback is insane stat, like you said, with Lamar Jackson and everyone. But I feel like Justin Fields is known for using his legs, but his arm strength is also unreal. So if you were able to give him an offensive line to protect him, I mean, I think it's a different kind of offense that we're looking at as well.
But don't you then think that it's in some part incredible that a coaching staff that at the beginning of the year, I'm sure wasn't completely bought into this guy because it wasn't their guy, 7 weeks into the season was like, let's give him input into this because we think that he might be the guy, but like we can't tell because our offensive line is so bad. I think that it's a pretty cool thing to mark if you're a fan or if you're covering the team, to say, all right, now they think they have a guy and they are allowing him to, again, input himself into the offense and tell them what he thinks will work best for him.
So that's where I would push back, because I don't know that the Bears, I don't think that I mean, yes, obviously this was an amazing performance, and over the last couple weeks, we've seen significantly improved play from the first 20 games of his career, or first 15 games, whatever it was, that wasn't great. But I don't think if I was Bears upper management, I don't think I'd be sold yet. I think that like show me a run of games. That's the nature of the Chase Claypool trade, right? Is let's go get this guy another receiver, and if he still can't operate a successful offense with multiple competent receivers, at least I would say multiple competent running backs, that's enough that you should be able to see what you've got in a guy. And I think that getting more of a spectral view at it is seeing like, okay, Lions, Falcons coming up. Those are games where he could absolutely feast, right? Like those are games where if you have an above average quarterback or offense, they can take down those teams. I would say personally, I'm not totally bought in on Justin Fields, but he definitely is lengthening the leash because this isn't the administration that got him in. So their
Right.
allegiance is going to be much lower than even Bears fans. See, in Chicago being a fickle sports town, like people have been hard on Fields anyways. But no way, if I'm Pauls and Eberflus, it's still a like, we got to make sure and see what we've got with this guy because this upcoming draft could be one of the best quarterback drafts from what I've been hearing. That if you commit to Fields and he isn't what you think he is, you might have to wait another few years to start this process over again. So it was encouraging, but I still think you show me more. That sounds so selfish and greedy, but like, show me more. 132 yards passing. Show me more.
Yeah,
No, I
agree.
I agree. No, I'm right there with you, Jack. And like I said, I think that there needs to be more longevity, but I think that you're seeing the growth, the exponential growth of a dude in the past 3 games where it doesn't look lucky, it just looks good. There were times early with Trubisky when you go back and look at it where everybody was touting him as like, oh, he might be a guy. We might have somebody. There was times where Trubisky made it look lucky, and if you go back to that first season when he was paired with Matt Nagy, they got figured out by week 9. This is an offense that is kind of relearning itself, right? Like it wasn't a rushing quarterback from week 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to week 7. But it's when they went to rushing the ball with Justin Fields that things really started to open up for them and they started playing more competent football. So they got a mini bye after that Thursday night game against the Commanders and they reevaluated some things and they came out and then now they're just punching people in the mouths with Justin Fields' running ability. And the other thing, I've had this conversation a couple times with people like, yeah, well, if your quarterback's always running, he's going to get hurt. Justin Fields looks like a dude who is beyond capable of not getting hit, right? Like he's somebody who's going to look for the sideline instead of look for the extra yard. He's going to slide instead of look for the extra yard. And at the end of the day, that's what you want. You don't want Cam Newton being brutalized in the middle of the field as your quarterback. You want a guy like Fields when it comes to running the football.
Yep, definitely. I think I'm going to use that as an opportunity to pivot to another game that I thought was interesting, and that's the way that the NFC West currently looks, which is sort of upside down from predicted. Kyler Murray, I think, is the school of what you're saying with Justin Fields, of the like he can generate yards, but he's not Josh Allen, he's not Daniel Jones, he doesn't just run head first, not Sam Ellinger, who just like runs right into contact. No, these are guys that all like are downhill quarterback runners, which is weird. Kyler's got that escapability, but that's also part of the concern with Fields is people are starting to question Kyler Murray a bit. The Seahawks beat the Cardinals in Arizona 31-21, and they are now multiple games, either a game and a half or 2 games up in the division. I think a game and a half over San Francisco, and then the Rams and Cardinals are at the bottom, which again, I feel like is kind of the opposite of at least what I expected. I have to see if I could pull up my preseason picks, but I think I had the Rams winning the division. The Seahawks are pegged to get last in most things that I saw. So that might be, another kind of canary in the coal mine flag of how do teams approach things going forward? Because this trade deadline was largely set up by the McVay school of Rams, which is we don't need picks. If we can turn picks into valuable players, we turn players into playoff runs. We turn playoff runs into Super Bowls. Well, there's definitely question about, are the Rams just unlucky? Have they just had some injuries and some things fizzle out this year? But then you look at like the Seahawks did the total opposite. The Seahawks are like, let's get rid of our all-star franchise quarterback. Let's roll with a guy who just hasn't been super great in his career. We're going to try, hopefully this rookie running back gets going. And all of a sudden the Seahawks are looking like believe it or not, probably one of the top 4 teams in the NFC right now. So I think this could be how do teams learn from the NFC West if it continues as current? Are we going to see a shift in the way teams start to value quarterbacks? Because we saw this with running backs over the last 6 or 7 years. Like, if you can find a guy who does enough, you don't need the guy who does it all.
We talked about the Seahawks 2 weeks ago, and I'm still baffled by how they are as good as they are. They are 2 games up on the 49ers. The Niners 4-4, the Seahawks 6-3. Seahawks have yet to hit their bye, I believe. But there's no words for it. There's no words to describe why the Seahawks are heads better than the Cardinals, the Rams, and even the 49ers this year. Though the 49ers you can kind of mark as, well, their quarterback and their plans kind of got delayed after week 2, but like
They're running
theoretically,
back, receiver,
they're running back.
Their defensive end.
I think the 49ers are still genuinely good. They've just been so marred by injury that they're not where they should be. But like the Rams, you talk about the value of draft picks and haphazardly just kind of throwing them around at already talented players. It's a okay strategy, but in terms of longevity, there comes a time where that doesn't, it will not work. You can't get young, talented players without draft picks. You just can't. And so like the Rams might be running into that situation already. I know it's kind of like a super easy take, but like they might already be there. It might already be that like, okay, we got our Super Bowl, but what did it cost? Literally the next 5 years of our franchise and beyond, because we're going to be so thin. Our cupboard is so bare with draft capital that we might not be able to rebound and be the dynasty type team that people think that we could have been.
Which is, I mean, that, and as a baseball fan and specifically a Cubs fan, you're acutely aware of what is the philosophical stance of an NFL or any professional sports team. I mean, you can simulate this if you log on to whatever major sports video game and you set goals for your coach, your team. Do you want to be a contender for a long time, or do you want to be a championship team for a very short amount of time? Because if you look through history, there's a lot of circumstance and luck that goes into creating those empires, like the New England Patriots of the 21st century. How many of those Super Bowls were won on super thin margins, or AFC championships where they just skated by, or somebody on the other team got hurt, or, a referee's decision was questionable. Like, there's so much luck involved that is it better to just get a team of mercenaries, get that championship, and then you get to go around and say, hey, we did this. We won the championship.
Philosophically, you have to decide as a franchise what you want to do. How much does that trophy mean to you? Is it a matter of, okay, we got the thing and now we know we're going to be bad, but we got the thing? Or is it a matter of, we want to try to get as many shots at the thing as we can? I think the majority of people would say, build the dynasty, build the thing that's going to get a lot of shots at it, because you obviously want more Super Bowls. But if you create a window where it's 2 years where you are just absolute chock full of world-breaking dudes, you got the thing. If you swing and miss, though, it's like the risk-reward ratio is way off in that situation. So,
well, and it's tricky with the Rams because you have to figure there are some guys that they would have liked to hold on to. Like Von Miller's a guy that if they could have held, that would have helped. Odell Beckham, if he doesn't tear his ACL, they probably keep him, and we don't have to worry about this Allen Robinson experiment that is currently not working. So the plans can change so fast in pro.
But at the same time, look at the other sideline in that game. The Bucks are a team that have held on to their draft picks and have still spent money to bring in big name players and world breakers and people of that echelon, but still they haven't drafted well. They got their championship. They still technically have a window to keep winning championships. If you get to the playoffs, they say anything can happen, but it's kind of an interesting juxtaposition of these two great teams that we know should be great, but are both experiencing issues, and their philosophies are so different based on where they project their teams to be. So a fun conversation for sure. I wanted to point out one thing, in that the Jets beating the Bills dramatically changes the landscape of the AFC East as we move forward. There's currently 6 There's currently 3, 6, and 3 teams in the AFC East. I don't know how the Jets are here. I don't think the Jets know how the Jets are here, but the Jets are here, and they eke out a game against a Buffalo team that played pretty poorly. So I think that it was an interesting week of NFL football.
Yeah, no, there'll be Jets talk to come for sure. So,
I
I'll hold it.
I see why you're holding your cards close.
Yeah, I'll hold.
So, Jack, why don't you excuse me? We'll edit that sneeze out.
Dang, if only this had a mute button.
I don't think I have one, or else
What?
I would have used it.
Command D or Control D, I think. Try it.
Hello?
Oh, that's what it is on mine. Oh, that's an awesome moment. Please keep that in. Please.
I'll keep all of it just for you. Jack, tell me a little bit about New England and Indianapolis this week, and we'll transition to blank you very much as you do so.
New England beats the Colts 26-3. The Colts, I feel like there's still bones on this team that should create a skeleton that can do something because the AFC South is so bad. And even though the Titans are a couple games in front of them, like, I don't think the Titans are unreachably, good, even in comparison to the Colts. But this, I guess, was the week that broke Indy's back because they're just completely, they're
literally it broke the
tank
horse's
mode.
back.
Yeah. No, this is they're punting the season. They've got no clue what they're doing. Deion Jackson looked good a couple weeks ago. He was a disaster because he went down with an injury for a bit. Nobody had more than, I guess one guy had 4 catches. Nobody relevant had more than 3 catches in this game for the Colts. And the Patriots also, I don't think are that good of a team. They're above 500. You talked about the AFC East, that there's the 6-2 Bills, 6-3 Jets, 6-3 Dolphins. And then at 5-4, the Patriots are in last place. There are other divisions, which I'm not personally comfortable naming, where they would be in first place with the record that they have. So I think that this really has driven the Colts to, there's no reason for them to really keep trying unless they think that Matt Ryan has maybe regained some juice in the time that he spent away from quarterbacking. There's no hope, which sucks because they have some really good, young, talented players that felt like, oh, we could do something. The Patriots, meanwhile, are also in a weird spot because they've got a division where they're at best the 3rd best team. No one's putting them ahead of the Bills. No one's putting them ahead of the Dolphins. And you look around the AFC and are they really going to be, they're in it for a playoff spot, but are they really going to be in it? So I think Mac Jones is going to continue to be a bit of an interesting case study because he's not very good, but he seems to coordinate an offense fairly well, which, if you'll remember, was kind of the MO of Tom Brady early on. Is like before Tom Brady became the Tom Brady that he is, he was really just a good leader, could get the huddle going and took a team that wasn't, necessarily going to win a lot. And all of a sudden they won a lot for a long time. So no, I think I'm not buying into the Patriots, and I, at value and at price right now, want to buy into the Colts, but that feels like a losing endeavor.
So from this game, you go into this game, the Colts have just fired their offensive coordinator. And as I mentioned in the 1.1 rundown, they then call for 29 passes to the completely incapable Sam Ellinger.
Oh, yeah, it is Ellinger, I think. Yeah.
Ellinger.
I'd say Ellinger. It sounds better, but yeah.
They fire their OC. The OC has some kind of game plan that he thinks is going to work. It doesn't. It fails miserably. And then to retort the 26-3 loss, they go ahead and fire Frank Reich, somebody who I think across the league is known as a good guy, is not a bad head football coach, has had to deal with 7 different starting quarterbacks in his tenure as the coach of the Colts. They fire this guy, and they bring in Jeff Saturday, the guy who, of course, was the center for many, many years for Peyton Manning and that offense, and has very close ties to the Indianapolis organization. He's currently was a consultant for the team. So they hire Jeff Saturday, who, Jack, I think in the pre-show you said is your Nate Hackett Coach of the Week is Jeff Saturday, which is hilarious.
I'm calling my shot now. I mean, this guy is already off to a slow start in his coaching career. That's for sure.
So he has not zero previous coaching experience. He has one full season in 2019 as a high school football coach, where he led the 138th worst high school team in the state of Georgia to a 3-8 record.
Yep. As a high school coach, his record 20-16 overall is what I had seen.
Yeah.
That's high school. Okay, wait. So now I have to ask, because we have different high school backgrounds. I remember the school where I went was pretty good while I was there for high school. And like, you have games that in high school are just massacres, and it gets to a point where if anything goes wrong, you're like, well, that's probably the coach, because they don't actually have to do anything when you're just more talented than some of the other schools in your area. Did you guys have similar, either your school or schools in the area, where it's like could not possibly go 500 because everyone else just couldn't keep up?
Tyler's not allowed to answer this question because he played in the Chicagoland Catholic League circuit. He was a JCA guy. But he's probably able to answer. But so you're saying a team that like was just so bad that it couldn't go 500?
No. A team that was so good that like no matter what happened, you were never concerned. That like 500 isn't even in your school history.
In public or in like private?
I was public, so I guess I'm referring.
I was public too, and in my area, I don't think that we had a team like that in terms of public school. In terms of private school, Tyler can definitely speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, for when I was in high school, at least, you're able to get more guys that you want, I guess, because of recruiting. If you want to go that route, I know everyone's going to be like, oh, recruiting in high school, whatever. But yeah, I don't think I ever went below 500 in high school because we were just always so talented.
So that, like, if you're Jeff Saturday, right? Is he a Hall of Famer? Is he on the ballot? I don't know that he's been in, but he definitely, I think, was like a Hall of Fame candidate. Let's at least give him that credit. That like this is an elite NFL offensive lineman, a Super Bowl champion, has been in broadcasting for like 5 years at ESPN, decides, you know what? I want to spend my Friday nights coaching. This guy could get a coaching job at any high school in the country because he's Jeff Saturday. He's a star football player, right? How do you go just over 500? How do you parlay that into anybody at a higher level going, you know what? I bet this guy's a pretty good coach.
So I've commonly thought that good to great former players, like guys that you know their names really well when they retire, will never be good head football coaches. I'm shocked at the work that Deion Sanders is doing at Jackson State, because I think that people who are just naturally gifted and incredible athletes and so good at their sports don't know how to teach it because they were just always naturally gifted. I don't think Peyton Manning would be a good coach. I don't think Drew Brees would be a good coach. I'm just listing quarterbacks, but like similarly, I don't think Alex Rodriguez would be a good coach, or Barry Bonds. Barry Bonds had a couple different stints as a hitting coach, and he never worked out. He's one of the most feared hitters of all time. Never worked out because his brain works different. Like,
but that's at the professional level, right? I'm talking like, if you're telling me that if Barry Bonds was like, I'm going to be the high school coach at Kansas City High School or some random place, right? Like, if you live in the area and your kid's good at baseball, it doesn't matter public or private. Yeah, I want my kid playing for Barry Bonds. So already there's a magnet for talent. B, you have somebody who has experience beyond what other, I'll say, potentially age comparable coaches might have. Like maybe they don't have the same experience and wisdom that a guy who's been coaching high school for 20 or 25 years has. But like, it's a high school. I don't think, I forget about Jeff Saturday in the NFL, like 20-16. That's not good.
Again, I think it applies similarly. Tyler, give me just a second, but like I feel like it applies similarly. If you're so much better than everybody, Jeff Saturday, Hall of Famer or not, was one of the best centers and interior linemen in the game when he was playing football. He was. But I don't think that translates to then at even the high school level, you being able to appropriately teach the fundamentals of football because you have always just been that much better. You've never, not that you've never, but like you don't have to think about the little things as much is my general thought process here. But Tyler, go ahead.
So I have a lot to just kind of get out here.
Fire away.
First off, like with the high school record, I personally believe that shouldn't matter. I mean, a lot of people I think are blowing it up to be bigger than it already is. When you're in high school, you're not even fully developed. Like, how many offensive linemen in high school, like they're like 250 pounds, like soaking wet. You know what I mean? So you're dealing with kids who are, they're just going out to play the sport. They just like the game of football. It's not going anywhere after that. They're not the most talented people, but they want to play with their friends. So I think it's very inappropriate to say that how he coached a group of high school kids is going to relate when you get to the big time with a bunch of professionals, because it is very, very different. Now, in that aspect, I think he might be one of the better coaches that has been a player. Just specifically because he has the intelligence of the game playing center. As a center, you pick up more things than other position players do, because you really kind of have to know everything because you're leading the entire offensive line. So I think he brings an aspect of intelligence and knowledge of the game. And I still think that he'll be able to help the offensive line, which has gone through so many shifts this year that I think they've had like 4 or 5 or 6 different offensive lines starting this season. So it's been a shuffle because of injuries. I think he'll be able to help in that aspect, at least to scrap what they have left. But I don't think it's like all hope is lost that he's getting an opportunity to coach. I think, he coaches the rest of the season and it goes okay. Like, oh, okay, well, maybe we can consider him next year. Like they're not saying that they're hiring him. He's just filling in right now.
Sure. No, and I get all that. And it's entirely possible that things go well for Jeff Saturday. And we'll get to the actual point of blank you very much in just a few minutes. But the other thing that I wanted, and I might be opening up a can of worms, that is...
Open it.
Yeah. The other thing that I think is important to note in this situation is I think that there's a lot of NFL fans, common NFL fans, that are going to forget about the transgressions of the NFL and the head coach hiring processes that they have of this past offseason when Brian Flores was fired and, was basically blacklisted from the Dolphins. And then, we had the whole situation happen with Brian Daboll and Brian Flores as they both interviewed for the Giants job. And there was a text sent to Brian Flores that was meant for Brian Daboll, even though Brian Flores was still being technically considered for the job, right? It's just all this nefariousness about the amount of black head coaches that we have in the NFL in a league that is predominantly staffed by black men as the athletes, right? So to see this guy who has a 20-19 record in high school football randomly and with no affiliation to coaching whatsoever at the NFL level get a shot to be the interim coach, I think is technically a little troublesome. I think it's worrisome, and I think that it points back to the original problem of the NFL and most professional leagues are just a good old boys club.
That is 100% a problem. And that would be the even bigger concern is if somehow this interim coach turns into a head coaching position for Jeff Saturday. I think that also undercuts a history of interim coaches who are there as placeholders and not meaningfully given a shot, because we have seen guys. I mean, even forget about coaches of color for a second. The Raiders last year with, what was the guy's name? Rich Bisaccia.
Yeah, you got it.
Rich Bisaccia. He took the Raiders to the playoffs after everything that happened with them. They didn't bother keeping him. So it's like the interim coach is such a meaningless label. And that's like, they can skirt the Rooney Rule thing with this because they're not actually, to my knowledge, the Rooney Rule only applies to head coaching searches and coordinator position searches, maybe also general manager at this point. I'm not sure, but doesn't apply. Interim coach technically is a different title. So no, I think that's absolutely an issue is whether or not you think the high school record is meaningful, which I have to guess that most hiring positions in professional sports do look at a coach's record, whether it's college or high school or pro. Like, you want somebody who has a proven track record of winning. Even if you throw that out, you have a guy who has very little coaching experience in any capacity, not even like an offensive assistant on the team. He's been listed as the Colts. I think it was like as a football consultant, was he listed as?
Yes, for the front office.
Again, front office. I would imagine most coaches would tell you, and most front office people would tell you, those are two very different realms of working in football. I don't think working in the front office for a long time gets you credibility in coaching. So I guess I'll give him props as an analyst. I think that matters for. Oh, go ahead, Tyler. Go ahead, Tyler.
No, I really this is like really making me up like angry. And as a player, he's played for 10 years. Like, the knowledge that he has of the game is so beyond that of pretty much everyone on that roster that I mean, if you come in as a coach and you're worried about the respect aspect, I think he meets that. I think knowledge aspect, I think he meets that. I don't know. I just think it's like really being picky as like an outsider. Like, this guy played so much football. He knows the game. He's been on really good teams. He won a Super Bowl with Peyton Manning, I'm pretty sure. Like,
he did.
Like, I think he has like all the things that you ideally want, and he just doesn't have the coaching experience. But I feel like you have the ability here to get away with that as with the interim title, and like you could just test him out. And I do believe that there is a problem with like the Rooney Rule and all that. And I just think that all this fuss about Jeff Saturday getting the job is just like, this guy is like a legend. Like, like I watched him growing up. You know what I mean? Like, he's one of the best.
I think what you add to the conversation here is valuable, and it's not wrong. It's entirely possible and reasonable that because a guy played in the NFL for a decade or more and did so successfully and at a very high level, that's enough for you to say, okay, this guy for the remaining 8 games of the season can be our head coach and we can try him out. I think that it's also correct to come in from a standpoint, especially with where we're at in the climate of the NFL and in the way that they hire head coaches and the way that it's been proven that it's a flawed system, that there still should be cause for concern when you look at this hire as a whole. During this conversation, and Jack, maybe you saw me elicit a response over here, I looked at the Colts coaching staff. On this coaching staff sits not only Gus Bradley, who's been coaching for 33 years in the NFL, also is John Fox, who has been coaching in the NFL for 4 years.
He's a Super Bowl winning coach.
He's a Super Bowl winning coach. You have other guys on this staff too. Richard Smith, their linebackers coach, has coached for 44 years. Chris Strasser, their offensive line coach, has coached for 34 years. Ron Millis, their defensive backs coach, has coached for 32 years. Doug McKenney for 35 years. You go down this list. Russie Jones for 35 years. Richard Howell for 29 years. So, like, you start to look through this, and again, Tyler, it is entirely possible that they just say, this is a guy that's meant a lot to our organization, understands our organizational chemistry, understands the power dynamics, understands everything, and can come in day one and know how to do all of these things. And we feel confident that he's going to be able to fill in as head coach and maybe even turn this thing around to some degree. But it's also entirely possible that they just completely shat on the entire process of getting an interim head coach. And also, I don't know how close that he's been to this roster. I can't say that one way or another. I don't know how close he's been to this roster. So is he going to be introducing himself to people?
Well, in defense of the hire too, I will say that the reverse isn't a ton better, right? Like, you talk about the issue with how few coaches of color there have been and how their leashes have been shorter and how, the tenures are quick, and oftentimes it is like an interim title. So it wouldn't have felt great even if like a black coach was hired for interim coach. Like, we already have that history of like, okay, that guy's probably not sticking around. So it's not that they needed to hire a person of color. I think the issue with the like coaching staff tenure is another thing, but this isn't a super coveted position, right? Like, there might not be too many people clamoring to take over to fill in the second half of the year for this team based on what they've performed. So that's where you're right. It could be like he's close to the organization, and it honestly could be like he's willing to step in a situation where maybe not a lot of guys are. And like what Tyler's saying too, for sure, we definitely have seen like football insiders do create meaningful change. Recently, we've had a couple big examples, right? Like Kellen Moore was considered one of the best offensive coordinators. This is not a guy who had the same level of success that Jeff Saturday did. He's not a Hall of Famer. He's not a Super Bowl champion. He's certainly the talent level seemed to be nowhere near that, but he's been phenomenal in his role as offensive coordinator. And people are thinking, will he be a head coach someday? And that's another one of those like, how did Kellen Moore get the job of all people? But it's very tough as fans to gauge which football players know their stuff and which don't. And that's where it's a little fishy and kind of strange to me that Jeff Saturday last week was on NFL Today or NFL Live as an analyst. But at the same time, I know that analysts come from a position of they're watching just as much tape and game footage and reviewing football. Like he hasn't really been away from the game of football, but he hasn't played in a while and he hasn't coached much, right? So he's still definitely in football circles. But I agree with what you're saying, Tyler, that it's not really a Jeff Saturday specific thing. It's more, I think the complaints at large are more this kind of hire, because I also think like Jeff Saturday is probably one of the only offensive linemen that a good number of football fans who watched in like the 2000s could name easily off the top of their head. Like he was absolutely a dynamic player.
Right. No. I think to end this conversation, to put a bow on it, let's get to the point of blank you very much, which I ask. The Jeff Saturday experiment will end blank. Fill in the sentence. How will this end? How will it end? When will it end? Whatever. Just will end blank.
I think Tyler and I are going to have very different answers. So I'll let you go first, Tyler.
So I don't think it will. I think it will help. The Jeff Saturday experiment will end being better off for Jeff Saturday than the Indianapolis Colts. I think that he will show that he has coaching capability and he could be a potential for jobs in the future. But I don't think it does anything for this Colts. I think this hire, another point that I wanted to bring up is that they don't trust anyone on the staff to be the interim head coach. They went out of the office to hire Jeff. So I think that they're already looking towards the future and just examining another coaching candidate close to the organization.
Jack.
I said the Jeff Saturday experiment will end up changing the Rooney Rule. I think we're going to have to take a step back in terms of the hiring process because this isn't something covered, but interim coach is as close to head coach as you can get without actually being head coach. And so I don't know if that means it's going to be affected as far as like, do you have to go through an extreme hiring process because it is more of an immediate procedure, right? Like Frank Reich gets fired, they need to name a head coach very quickly. You can't undergo extensive interviews. But the spirit of it too is, do rules change when you're looking outside of the organization as to inside? Because most of the time interim coaches are just promoted assistants or coordinators. And this is one of the rare times where it hasn't been. So I think it is going to raise questions, whether it's specifically on the grounds of race or where their previous position was. But I think that I do think that this will balloon into a larger issue, and not because it's the Colts and not because it's Jeff Saturday, but just because it's unique and we haven't seen it before.
I like both takes. I went with a much simpler tone to this. I think the Jeff Saturday experiment will end after this season.
I thought about that. I almost had that.
I think that Tyler, I think that you're right. I think that he probably shows some amount of capability to do this. And I think that he probably ends in a better situation than he began in terms of quest for a secure head coaching position, as secure as a head coaching position in the NFL can be. Frank Reich is a great example of that. But I think it ends at the end of the year. And I think that maybe even part of it, just to tie all of our takes in, is because the Rooney Rule gets changed. And so this hire has to be reevaluated. And, so some things may transpire here in the offseason. But
Okay.
with that,
I'm going to put a bow on your bow. Do you guys know who the Colts are playing this week?
Not off the dome, no.
They are playing the Josh McDaniels-led Raiders.
Oh,
so to bring everything to a full circle, McDaniels was supposed to be the Colts head coach years ago, and when he backed out at the last second, they went with Frank Reich instead. So because everything in the end is a circle, we're back to Josh McDaniels and the Colts this week.
All things somehow come back to Josh McDaniels. Anyway, let us move on to the second topic here, and blank you very much, which is a recurring segment to the segment that Jack Coachman proposed, and I really like. And so we do it about every 4 weeks of the NFL season. A team whose record isn't representative of their true value is who? Jack Coachman or Tyler Witt. Either somebody.
Go right ahead, Jack.
Fill the void.
New York Jets. I hinted at it earlier that we're going to be talking about them again, and it's because they're a 6-3 team. But you can go up and down, and in theory, you can pick apart any record. So maybe this is kind of a fruitless game to be playing. But they really do not have a ton of quality wins outside of beating the Bills this week. They beat a hapless Broncos team that's been an absolute dumpster fire this season. They beat a Packers team that at the time was like, oh my gosh, they beat Rodgers and the Packers. And now we're looking and like, okay, that's not that impressive. They beat the Dolphins, which looks really cool, except when you look and see that Teddy Bridgewater played like 5 snaps and then Skylar Thompson played the rest of the game. They beat the Steelers, who I would say that's a fine win in Pittsburgh. And then they also had that miracle win over the Browns where they scored like 10 or 14 points in the last 2 minutes of the game. So even though we're kind of on this, oh my gosh, the Jets are like in the playoff picture, they're a half game out of the division lead. I don't even think they're necessarily the third best team in their division. And I think that this is another kind of quarterback question mark team because they have so many young, talented skill position players. They've got a lot of young, talented defensive players, offensive linemen, all across the board. They're looking very strong, except quarterback. Zach Wilson hasn't looked great, and they've given him a bounty of opportunities and a lot of toys to play with. And they've won games, but it hasn't been what 6-3 would make you think. So I say the Jets.
Great answer. Tyler.
I think the last time I talked about the Baltimore Ravens, and I want to double down on them again. Just 6-3, I think they're a lot better than people are letting on. I think there's just underlooked. They're just like, yeah, the Ravens are good, just kind of pass over them. But, I think they got some quality wins. The couple losses that they have, they've been – I think that they lead. The time that they have losing is like less the least amount in the whole league. It's like maybe a minute and a half, which is an insane statistic. But I think that the product of their work is, it's there. They lost to a really a good Giants team, which Daboll's turned around recently, but. I think that these guys are contenders and they're kind of firing on all cylinders right now.
Fun fact about the Ravens, they have in their remaining games one game against a team with a winning record. So I think that their record will balloon, but I'm definitely with you, Tyler, where 6-3 makes it look like they're on the same level as teams like the Jets. And it's like, no, they're actually a pretty high class team right now. I know firsthand from last night.
So I'll close this out and I'll say a team whose record isn't representative of their true value, I think, is the 49ers. We mentioned it earlier. I think it makes a lot of sense. They've dealt with a ton of injuries, but also some of the games that they've lost have just kind of been like flukes. Like they lost to the Bears in week 1, and we all know like that was the game where Justin Fields is doing the belly dive into the end zone because it was sopping wet. They lost 11-10 to the Broncos. The other games that they've lost are to the Falcons, who are frisky this year, but I forget who they were missing in that game, but I feel like they were missing a lot in that game, possibly like 3 running backs. And then they lost to the Chiefs in a blowout. So like, I think the only significant loss that you can pin on them is the Chiefs loss because it was by so much, but like the Falcons is a fluke. The Broncos, you just get caught. The Broncos win by 1 point and it's 11-10. And then the Bears is like the Bears losses.
Oh, that's the game Trey Lance got hurt too. That's
right.
when Trey Lance got hurt at the start of the game. So, no, that's another good call.
So, I think the 49ers are probably your answer here. And that'll do it for blank you very much. So we will move forward now into low-hanging fruit. Let hilarity ensue because this is typically where the show goes off the rails. Tyler, they suspended a tree.
They suspended the Stanford tree, which is unreal. It came out about 2 weeks ago. It was in October. They suspended the Stanford tree after bringing out a Stanford Hates Fun poster during the game. It was a protest done by students at Stanford due to harsh social restrictions. So I guess they have like a drinking policy on campus, and they have to get permits for every party, even if it's just us three. So it is a very unaccepting. Yeah, it's very unfun. It's very boring. The students are hating it. The students want more social life. And the mascot was like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to bring this sign out on the field. And they suspended him for the rest of the season.
And it's important to note, this is no regular school. Stanford is commonly known as like the crazy school. Like there's zaniness, there's all that type of stuff associated with Stanford. Like there's a lot of uniqueness to that school. When you stand to strip it away from the students who are likely there in part because of the way the school is, right? Like just the general makeup of the school. When you take that away from people, they're gonna fight back, especially college age students looking to drink and do God knows what else. They're gonna push back, and you suspending a tree is only going to make it worse.
I just think like if you think about the timeline for these students that are at Stanford right now, they had COVID. California has some of the toughest COVID regulations out of any state in the country. Then now you have them cranking down on permits and the drinking policy after COVID is cleared, and people want to socialize now. That's like the big thing. Everyone wants to socialize. So very unfun. Stanford, you suck.
I just to put an addendum on this, I did see it when trying to figure out what was going on. 43 released a statement. I don't know if you guys realized that the Stanford tree mascots refer to themselves by like the number that they are in the history of the mascots. And Stanford tree number 43 said they're coming out of retirement to serve while 44 is suspended, but 44 will be back. I'm like,
I did see that.
This is like how we refer to our presidents. Like, imagine if it's like, oh, Joe Biden, take a seat. Like, all right, you know what, Trump, like you're back in. Oh, Trump, you got suspended. All right, Obama, you're back in. Like,
here comes Jimmy Carter.
Yeah,
Jimmy Carter from left field.
Here comes 39.
Play the trumpets.
Like,
that was good.
Jimmy Carter, like slowly walking to the White House and trumpets going in the background.
They would have to get the bullpen cart for him. You know how they do that in Arizona? They have the cart to bring the guys out.
Oh my God, it's Jimmy Carter.
Turned into some weird intersection of like the WWE baseball. My God, it's Jimmy Carter. I don't believe my eyes. No, that's awesome. Yeah, again, that's part of the zaniness of Stanford is like their tree mascot. Every time there's a changing of the guard, like the tree changes. Every tree is unique in its own right, and that's a storyline to follow for sure. I want to follow up the tree suspension with the tokenization of Adam Schefter. I think it's hilarious. They obviously see him. Some producer that is associated with the broadcast that he is on sees him as this kind of gray cardboard individual reporter guy who's very, to the point and not necessarily a ton of fun per se, especially on the air. So what did they do with him? Last year, they made him gritty and he blew out his ACL. in a parka and the most incredible fur boots you'll see in your life on a man. And then this year, because of the Kirk Cousins flying back to Minneapolis with the no shirt and all of the chains on, what'd they do to Adam Schefter? They put him out on the field for Monday Night Football in New Orleans, shirtless with a bunch of fake chains on. It's hilarious. I also love that Adam Schefter buys into it and does it because I think he sees himself as kind of a gray cardboard guy too when it comes to broadcasts. It's fun though. It's a lot of fun.
Here's a bit of a hot take while we're on the Schefter topic. I don't like Adam Schefter too much. I think I don't love that he has essentially the monopoly. I guess Ian Rappaport breaks news too for NFL Network, but like all news flows through Adam Schefter, and I feel like he's got such a record of like very clearly just spinning tweets and reports to like, oh, Odell Beckham potentially signing like in the best of his life. It's like, okay, like that was definitely Odell Beckham or his agent like sent you a text and said, hey, can you tweet this man? Like I'm trying to get a job again. Like no, Adam Schefter's definitely not the Schefter that I remember as a kid, but I do appreciate that he's willing to like he'll play the reindeer games that ESPN sets up.
Naturally, you will have your reporters who are there. You can tell who their sources are, right? And
Yes.
like Adam Schefter is very much an agent and player-driven source guy, whereas maybe somebody like help me with the name, Jack. You just said it.
Ian Rappaport.
Ian Rappaport, I can't say definitively one way or another, but he might be a more like organizational source guy. It just all depends on who the reporter is and where they've tied in. But Jack, wrap us up on low-hanging fruit. I
didn't have a great one, so it'll be super fast. I couldn't think of too good of one, but I just wanted to take the opportunity, not really to make fun of, but just to laugh at Alabama football. I think it's very fun to see, the evil empire has probably fallen, but I don't know. Knowing the college football playoff committee, Alabama could lose out and still probably make the playoffs. So I'm not writing them off yet, but 2 losses in 1 season. See you later. All of a sudden, I think we're going to get some Nick Saban offseason proposing rule changes. Either NIL was the problem, or conference restructuring needs to happen quicker, or the playoffs need to be expanded situationally if Alabama gets in, or Saban just retires. He said, we lost 2 games in a year, and one of them wasn't a postseason game. I'm gone. Nick Saban, amongst others, I think Coach K was the same way, is a gigantic baby when it comes to losing. And when it comes to like a failed season, they're babies. It's just nice to see as a fan, right? Tyler, fill me in. Will Alabama have a chance with Tennessee and Georgia being where they're at? Are they in separate divisions?
Well, I think Alabama and Georgia would only meet in the final.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, 2-loss Georgia versus a 2-loss Alabama. I think head-to-head, because Georgia's beaten Tennessee. I don't think Alabama can find a way in.
No, they can't. LSU beat them unless LSU. So the way it shakes out, there's an SEC West and SEC East. Georgia and Tennessee are both in the SEC East. Alabama is in the SEC West, along with Ole Miss and LSU. LSU, the team that beat Alabama this week. And so there's a chance that they find their way into the SEC championship game. I don't know that team would make it into the Final Four, though it's certainly possible. I don't think that they're dead yet, but they're certainly on life support. They would have to win out. LSU would have to have a dramatic south turn in order for Alabama to get in. I think they would need. Alabama plays Ole Miss next. They would need to like absolutely crush Ole Miss, because on top of 2 losses, they also barely skated past a then unranked Texas A&M, and also barely skated past an also unranked at the time Texas. And those are teams that have gone in and out of the rankings. So I would declare Alabama dead at this point. There would have to be disaster with like 6 teams in front of them. That's a fun sentence.
At least they should win the Iron Bowl this year.
Yeah. Yeah, you would think so. I'm curious what the line on that's going to be. I'd have to guess that Alabama's going to be at least like 20-something point favorites.
Gotta be.
Yeah.
And I'll take Auburn.
Oh, God.
Just for calamity.
Oh, no.
I'll take Auburn.
The Cadillac
Auburn won a game. What was the last game they won?
They're 3-6, so they've won a couple this year. But
September 24th, they beat Mizzou by a field goal.
Oh, Mizzou,
dude.
Also a team that does not belong in the SEC, along with Vanderbilt. Okay, let's wrap up this show. We're at an hour and a half, and my brain's ready to shut off. So let's hang a banner. Jack.
Well, I want to hang some in memoriam banners, not because they died, but because they're no longer a part of the show apparently, and that's to Tyler's foster dog, who gave us fun stories, and to Ryan's bed, which gave us fun scenery. So thank you for your service. But the banner that I'm hanging goes back to count your wins. The NFL trade deadline, more so than what happened, it's what might happen, which is reports from the last week that at least a handful of NFL owners and teams are approaching the league with interest of moving the trade deadline back as many as 2 weeks, potentially more than that. So we're looking if it's week 12, if it's week 10, I think were some of the proposed dates. I think because NFL teams are becoming more active at the trade deadline and it's so early in the season, all teams collectively are going to start figuring out it's tough to commit to which way you're going when there's such a mess in the middle fighting for these 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spots in the playoffs. So I'm hopeful that we start to see a pattern of more engaging and more active trade deadlines because this one was awesome. So hanging a banner for the trade deadline that was and starting to hang a banner for the trade deadlines that may be in the future.
Yeah, well, and if you think about it, right, like compare that to a league that I think has great trade deadlines. The MLB, they have their trade deadline set for July 31st, typically, maybe August 1st or 2nd. And that really only gives you 2 months with a player, but you've also spent 4 months with that player. So anyway, Tyler, wrap us up with your banner hanger thing.
This banner goes out to offensive lineman from Colorado, Tommy Brown, becomes the first ever college football NIL underwear model. But there's a catch. He's an offensive lineman. He's 315 pounds. This guy had this to say: when you have a body this good, you deserve to be paid. And I agree. Tommy, here's your banner.
Hell yeah. I thought you said there's a catch. I was like, oh my God, where are we going with this? I don't know anything about Tommy Brown. Who is this individual?
Tommy
Brown modeling underwear. I was like, oh no.
Tommy Brown, I mean, elite. This guy, I mean, just a big old boy in underwear model.
If you look up Tommy Brown,
you like seeing big boys in underwear.
I think this is just a step in the right direction for equality amongst the big players and the skilled players.
Thick equality.
Thick equality.
Thick quality?
I like that. Let's trademark
quality.
It. If you look up Tommy Brown underwear model, the first headline that comes up is from SB Nation, and the headline is "Thick King Tommy Brown is a perfect choice for the first NIL underwear model in college football." So this is quickly taking the world by storm. No, that actually is very exciting news.
Thank God it wasn't Trevor Lawrence. That would be weird. Though he looks kind of like Fabio. I'll hang my banner to end this show.
What just happened to you there?
I don't know. I think I short circuited.
That's how you know we're past 90 minutes.
I was just thinking, like, who would you think would be like the prototypical first underwear model? I was like, a quarterback, and then I thought of like long flowing hair. I was like, Trevor Lawrence.
This guy, you've had this Trevor Lawrence Fabio thing ready to roll for a while, haven't you?
Just wait for 1 point coverage next week. My banner this week goes to Mattress Mac, who, if you're unfamiliar, won the largest sum of money from a single sports bet in the history of American sports books that we know of, that was registered and legal. $10 million bet on 7.5 to 1 odds for the Astros to win the World Series. Placed it at the start of the playoffs, and it hit. 75 mil goes to the pockets of Mattress Mac. We talked about this the other day, Jack. Why mattress? He does own a furniture store, but a furniture store sells more than just mattresses. I think it's because $10 million stacked up and close together would look like a mattress. And so he laid a mattress down to win a bunch of mattresses. 7.5 mattresses, to be correct.
I think you're probably correct, but I'm still choosing to believe for the old conspiracy theories from a few years ago about what mattress firms were. And I'm going to say it's because mattresses are more closely associated with racketeering, fraud, and shady money dealing. So whichever way it works, the guy's got $75 million. I don't know who's getting it. I don't know where it's going, but he's got it now.
Allegedly back to the customers who helped him cobbled together the money to place a $10 million bet. They get some of their money back or all of their money back and then a little bit, and he gets to pocket the rest. So we hang a banner for Mattress Mac, the ultimate degenerate.
Would you guys ever do that? I see on Twitter every now and then the like, oh, everybody who retweets this, if I win the Powerball, you'll get something. But sometimes it's more like crowdfunded. Let's say whatever town you're living in, is like, oh, we're like all gonna chip in and play some massive sports bet or like some massive thing. Would you get in on that pool?
Yeah.
I get a chunk of it.
Yeah. It's like, because I mean, this guy, his thing is like, everybody invest in me. I'll invest in the Astros, our hometown team, and then if they win, we all win. Okay, that's an interesting thing.
I don't think there's laws against that.
No, because it's just like, I don't know, you buy something from a guy, or even if you just give it as a gift, charitable donation. Like maybe I'll go door to door and start asking people, hey, I've got this lockdown college basketball bet, and I want us all to be in on it. You could be a part of it too.
What do you think what do you think we could cobble together for a 3-person podcast? Well, how much money? I'll throw in some belly button
American
lint.
money.
Yeah, I got belly button lint.
All of my money is tied up in my Canadian bank account, so I have $2 of American money. That's not going to get us much.
Jack?
I got mugged by Mattress Mac so he could get the 10 million. So I'm broke.
All right. Well, with that, we wrap up episode 8, and it was episode 8, not episode 9. That's how we started. But we closed with the right number. Be sure to follow us on social media at Hangin Banners. On Sunday, Jack and I do the Sunday show where we go over fantasy matchups, fantasy usage, what you should do with your fantasy team, and also we talk a bit about gambling. We will not be placing $10 million bets, rather somewhere closer to
take like 9 zeros off.
yeah, lots of zeros off. But with that, we will wrap up episode 8. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you next week. Peace.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot for that look into sports, Brian.
Yeah.
And when we come back, we'll have one final look at weather. Stay tuned.